In the 1980s, Frankfurt am Main thrived as West Germany's crossroads its airport, highways, and red light district, drawing people from around the world. But beneath the city's busy surface, a darker story was unfolding. Around Frankfurt, Central Station, Basler Platz, and Offenbach, 7 youths between 11 and 18 vanished, later found dead in woods, industrial zones, or the sewers, each showing signs of violence and prolonged suffering. That darkness surfaced in the fall of 1982. On September 19th, sewer master Peter Sauer began his shift in Darmstadt when an alarm signaled a blockage, expecting routine waste. He inspected the tunnels only to uncover a mutilated body tangled in the system. But what he found was anything but routine. Lodged in the grate near a rotating screw that forced wastewater uphill was a tangled, mutilated body. Horrified, Sauer immediately called the police. Responding officers recovered the remains of a young male. At first, investigators couldn't be certain what they were dealing with. Was it a tragic accident, a suicide, or something far more sinister? Identification was nearly impossible. The body was badly damaged, stripped of obvious clues. The coroner noted only one distinguishing feature: a pronounced overbite, yet no missing person report in the region matched this description, with no name, no leads, and no clear cause. The Darmstadt Criminal Investigation Department reluctantly shelved the case. Officially, it was logged as an unresolved corpse case. What no one realized then was that this gruesome discovery was not an isolated tragedy. It was the first clue in a much larger, far more terrifying pattern of murders that would haunt Frankfurt for years to come. 9 months after the first gruesome discovery, Frankfurt's underground network revealed yet another horror. Once again, sewer master Peter Sauer was on duty when the system alarm sounded. Just like before, he assumed it was a blockage, a routine call-out. But as he made his way through the tunnel, his flashlight beam caught something twisted in the current. It was another body. Unlike the first case, investigators found a clue: the initials MH, stitched into the victim's waistband. The body had been in the sewer for some time, but like the earlier case, it seemed to have entered through the same access point. And then came the chilling detail that changed everything. The second victim was found still wearing handcuffs. What had once been treated as an unresolved death could no longer be dismissed as tragic coincidence. Police were now forced to confront a terrifying realization: a predator was hunting young men in Frankfurt, and the city's sewer system was being used as his dumping ground. The victims discovered in the Ursachen sewers weren't random. Investigators soon connected them to Frankfurt's notorious Bahnhofsviertel, the red light district around Central Station. Between 1976 and 1983, this area became the backdrop for a string of brutal killings. The pattern was harrowing. Most victims were young sex workers or teenagers drawn to the city by curiosity, poverty, or the lure of adventure. Their final moments were marked by unspeakable violence. Some were stripped naked, others were bound, many were beaten, strangled, or sexually assaulted before their bodies were discarded like refuse. The sewers didn't just hide their remains, they became part of the killings themselves. Autopsies revealed that in several cases, the victims were still alive when they were dumped underground. Fluid in their lungs confirmed they had drowned in filthy wastewater or suffocated in the toxic gases below. Frankfurt was beginning to realize it wasn't dealing with isolated tragedies. These were the systematic acts of a serial killer, later dubbed the Frankfurt Sewer Killer. The first known case was on September 7, 1976, when soldiers found the mummified remains of a young man along a woodland path near Stangenrod in Gießen. Victim, believed to be between 15 and 18 years old, had been dead for 4 to 6 weeks. His skull showed signs of a violent blow, likely the cause of death. Authorities speculated he may have been a foreign traveler simply passing through Germany. When found, he was wearing nothing but a pair of striped socks. On May 23, 1982, in the Offenbach district of Dreieich, the decomposed body of a boy named Eric was discovered behind the Schnecken Inlet. His remains revealed shocking injuries: a shattered pelvis, an exposed thigh bone, and a fractured skull. The condition of the body suggested he had been lying in the sewers for over 6 months. Fatty wax had formed across his skin, further evidence of the long decay. The cause of death could not be definitively determined, but the brutality was clear. Just months later, on September 19, 1982, sewer worker Peter Sauer made the first of what would become several horrifying discoveries: a clothed body had blocked a septic tank in Ershausen near Dortmund. The victim was eventually identified as a 17 or 18-year-old sex worker known only as Bernd. He was remembered in Frankfurt's red light district for his distinctive overbite. Autopsy results suggested Bernd had still been alive when he was forced into the sewer, drowning in the wastewater as he suffocated. Identification was extremely difficult. It would take more than 2 years before authorities confirmed who he was. On July 2, 1983, another young life was uncovered. The remains of 17-year-old Marcus were found in the sludge tank of the Dreieckbuchschlag sewage facility. His hands were cuffed. Though he bore no other external injuries, evidence suggested he had been dragged or carried through the sewer pipes. Marcus's life had been unstable, caught between reform schools and Frankfurt's drug scene. The last time he was seen alive was in early 1983, traveling with 3 men who claimed they were heading toward Saarbrücken. 2 months later, on September 9, 1983, the body of 14-year-old Fuad, a Moroccan boy, surfaced in Frankfurt's Niederrad sewage treatment plant. At first, investigators dismissed his death as a tragic accident, perhaps drowning or gas inhalation. But within days, suspicions grew, and Fuad's death was reclassified as murder. He had been missing since September 1st. Only a few weeks later, on October 11, 1983, the youngest victim was found, hidden beneath a manhole cover at the same plant. The body of 11-year-old Oliver was pulled from the darkness. His remains showed marks consistent with leg irons, proof he had been restrained. Before being killed, Oliver had run away from home earlier that year and had vanished without a trace until this gruesome discovery. The final known victim surfaced years later. On June 21, 1989, in Offenbach-Rosen, only bones and scraps of clothing remained when 14-year-old Daniel was found in a sewer tributary. He had been missing since 1983, for 6 years. His fate had been a mystery. By then, investigators had begun piecing together the killer's method. It became clear that the murderer had exploited Frankfurt's vast underground system, lifting manhole covers and discarding restrained boys directly into the sewers. Some had been dead already, others were still alive when they were thrown into the dark network of tunnels, left to suffocate or drown in toxic wastewater. The bodies disappeared quickly and silently, sometimes for months, until they clogged the machinery of sewage treatment plants. The damage caused by decomposition and exposure made both identification and cause of death agonizingly difficult. In Bernd's case, it had taken more than 2 years to even put a name to the corpse. In response, authorities created a special task force under investigator Horst Kopp, codenamed AG-229, dedicated to tracking down the sadistic predator. One of the first men to come under suspicion was Thomas Art, a 40-year-old warehouse worker from Offenbach with a history of crime. Police began to wonder if he was the man who had turned Frankfurt's sewers into a graveyard for its lost boys. Investigators began to focus on a man named Thomas R., a warehouse worker from Offenbach with a troubling past. He was rumored to lure vulnerable boys, many of them homeless or adrift, to his garden shed in Frankfurt Trebstockwald, where he would assault them. Despite the violence of these encounters, he allegedly kept his victims silent with money, offering generous payments that bought their compliance. Police uncovered links between Thomas R. and Marcus, one of the murdered boys. Both had been seen frequenting the same gay bars in Frankfurt, a connection that raised alarm. But the evidence never quite held. Blood traces found in his shed did not match Marcus's blood type. A search of Thomas R.'s apartment turned up a gas pistol, knives, and handcuffs, but none of it tied him conclusively to the sewer murders. Despite knowing several victims, the lack of forensic proof kept charges from being filed. Police even featured the case on Aktensicken XY, but no leads emerged. Years later, criminal psychologist Rudolf Egg profiled the killer as a man in his 50s, at the time traumatized in childhood, driven by sadism and hatred, and deeply familiar with Frankfurt's sewers. Some victims were left alive to die underground, reflecting his contempt for human life. If accurate, the killer would now be in his 90s, his identity still unknown.